California lost more millionaires last year than any other state in America, and the exodus is accelerating in 2026. That sounds backwards. California is still where billion-dollar companies are born, where luxury homes sell for prices that barely sound real, and where success is supposed to look effortless. So why are the wealthiest people, the ones with the most money, the most options, and the fewest real constraints, leaving faster than everyone else? And why are so many of them moving to places they would have laughed at just a few years ago? Most people hear rich people leaving California and immediately think one word: taxes. Case closed. Too expensive. Too regulated. Too much government. But that answer is too simple, and that's exactly why it misses the real story. If this were only about taxes, the trend should have slowed down by now. It didn't. It got stronger. And in 2026, many of the people leaving aren't just trying to save money. They're trying to get back something California used to give them automatically, but no longer does. For a long time, California sold an unbeatable package. Not just sunshine, not just beaches. Access. Access to capital. Access to talent. Access to status. Access to the kind of network that could turn a startup founder into a billionaire, a producer into a power broker, or an investor into a kingmaker. Living in California, especially in places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Palo Alto, Newport Beach, or parts of San Diego, was never just about where you slept. It was about where you belonged. The address itself was part of the asset. That's what made wealthy people tolerate things that would have driven everyone else insane. High home prices, endless traffic, expensive private schools, high income taxes, strict regulation, aging infrastructure, insurance headaches, all of it came with the territory. But the trade-off made sense because California kept giving them leverage. One dinner could lead to funding. One neighborhood could double as a business ecosystem. One zip code could signal influence. The wealthy were not just paying to live there, they were paying to stay plugged into the machine. Now that machine is changing. The first crack is simple, but huge. California's biggest advantage, proximity, matters less than it used to. Not zero. Less. And that changes everything. For years, if you wanted to raise money, recruit elite talent, land studio meetings, or stay close to the center of action, you almost had to be there. But remote work, distributed teams, private aviation, and national investor networks weakened that old rule. A founder can live in Miami and still talk to Sand Hill Road. An executive can run a company from Austin, Scottsdale, or Nashville and still be in every room that matters. A media entrepreneur can build a massive audience from almost anywhere with a camera, a laptop, and the right distribution. And once proximity gets weaker, every other California problem gets louder. That's where the contradiction starts. Rich people can afford California. But affordability is not the real issue. Value is. Wealthy people do not obsess over whether they can pay the bill. They obsess over whether what they're buying is still worth it. And more of them are looking around and asking a brutal question. If I'm paying this much, why does so much feel harder, slower, riskier, and less enjoyable than it should? That question touches everything. A luxury homeowner paying massive property taxes and insurance premiums still has to worry about wildfire risk. A successful family in Los Angeles still loses hours of life to traffic. A tech executive in San Francisco can buy a multi-million-dollar home and still feel like the city around them is less predictable, less clean, and less functional than it was a decade ago. Money protects people from many problems. It does not protect them from friction. And California, for all its wealth, now comes with more friction than many wealthy people are willing to tolerate. But here's where the story shifts. Now, the people leaving are not all storming out in frustration. A lot of them are moving through strategy, quietly, methodically. They're not always fleeing. They're optimizing. That's the part most people miss. The wealthy are often the first group to move when a place starts losing its edge, because they have the freedom to act before the pain becomes urgent. Middle-class families may want to leave, but jobs, schools, housing costs, and social ties can keep them stuck longer. Wealthy people have flexibility. They can test another city with a second home. They can shift residency. They can move a company headquarters on paper before moving themselves in full. They can spend part of the year in Nevada, build in Texas, invest in Florida, and still keep a place in California while they decide what comes next. And so the rich do not always leave first because conditions are worst for them. They often leave first because they are best positioned to respond early. And when that happens at scale, it becomes a signal. Look at what many wealthy Californians are buying now. Not just bigger homes, control, more land, more privacy, more ease. States with lower taxes, yes, but also simpler permitting, easier expansion, newer infrastructure, and a stronger sense that daily life works the way it's supposed to. A luxury buyer in California may spend $4 million and still feel like they're compromising. In Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, or Florida, that same buyer may feel like they're gaining space, flexibility, convenience, and predictability all at once. And that word matters more than people realize: predictability. Now, wealth thrives on predictability. Investors want to know the rules. Business owners want to know the timeline. Families want to know what their neighborhood will feel like in 5 years. California still offers enormous upside, but to many high earners, it also feels more uncertain than it used to. Insurance markets are under pressure. Energy costs are high. Regulations can shift. Local governance can feel slow. Public battles are constant. Even when those problems are manageable, they create a background feeling that maintaining a high-end life in California now takes more effort than it used to. For wealthy people, that's a red flag. Not because they're fragile, because they think in opportunity cost. Every extra headache has a price. Every delay has a price. Every problem money can't solve cleanly has a price. And eventually, wealthy people start asking a different question. Where can I get the same or better lifestyle with fewer hidden costs, less friction, and more upside? That question has led many of them to states California used to underestimate. Texas became the obvious headline because it offered scale, no state income tax, a pro-business image, and major city energy. Florida offered tax advantages, global connectivity, and luxury migration hubs like Miami and Palm Beach. Nevada offered proximity to California without being California. Tennessee and Arizona became attractive for different reasons, from lower costs to newer development patterns. Even states that once felt culturally secondary to California started looking smarter to people who no longer needed the old prestige map. And that leads to the deepest shift of all. Status itself is moving. For decades, being wealthy in California meant you were close to the top of the American hierarchy. But in 2026, status is less tied to old geography than it used to be. If a founder exits a company while living in Austin, if a creator builds a media empire from Miami, if an investor networks from Nashville, then California no longer owns elite ambition the way it once did. It still has power. It still has influence. But it no longer has a monopoly on prestige. That changes behavior fast, because once wealthy people stop seeing California as the default home of success, staying becomes much harder to justify. You are no longer paying a premium to be where everything happens. You are paying a premium to remain in a place that still matters, but no longer matters enough to cancel out every trade-off. That's why taxes alone do not explain the exodus. Taxes are the headline. The real story is decoupling. Wealth is decoupling from California's geography. The old California promise was simple: pay more, get more. More access, more influence, more opportunity, more cultural relevance. The new reality feels different. Pay more, manage more, defend more, tolerate more, explain more. That is a dangerous shift for any place that depends heavily on high earners, because high earners are especially sensitive to declining value. And when they leave, the consequences are bigger than a few empty mansions. High-income residents contribute heavily to the tax base. They support not just luxury markets, but local revenue, philanthropy, private investment, startup ecosystems, and the invisible economic gravity that pulls talent into a place. When wealthy people leave, they do not take only their spending. They take networks. They take founders. They take future companies. They take donor money. They take social proof. They send a message to other ambitious people that maybe the best move is no longer west. That message matters, even if California remains incredibly rich. A place does not collapse overnight. It can stay powerful for years while still losing momentum around the edges. And momentum is what wealthy people watch first. That may be the most important point in this story. Rich people are not always reacting to disaster. Often, they are reacting to direction. They care less about where California is today than where it seems to be heading. If they believe the next 5 years mean more friction, more cost, more risk, and fewer unique advantages, and they move before the decline becomes obvious to everyone else. That's why this trend feels bigger in 2026. It's not just that more people are leaving. It's that more wealthy people feel confident leaving. A few years ago, leaving California could look like a gamble. Now it can look like a smart upgrade. That psychological shift is huge. Once enough wealthy people believe they are not giving something up by leaving, but gaining something better, the outflow stops looking temporary and starts looking structural. But there's one final twist. California is not emptying out because it has nothing left. In some ways, that would be easier to understand. The real reason this story is so revealing is that wealthy people are leaving one of the most desirable places in the world on purpose. Not because California is worthless, and because for a growing number of them, it no longer feels uniquely worth the premium. Other states now offer wealth, lifestyle, influence, luxury, and growth without demanding the same sacrifice. That is the hidden truth behind the headline. When wealthy people leave a struggling place, nobody is surprised. When they leave a place that is still beautiful, still famous, still economically massive, and still globally influential, that gets attention. Because it suggests something deeper than frustration. It suggests recalculation. And recalculation is what the wealthy do best. So why are wealthy people leaving California faster than everyone else in 2026? Because they can see the trade-off more clearly than most. They are no longer choosing between paradise and compromise. They are choosing between one expensive version of success and several newer, easier, more flexible versions of success in other states. California still wins on image. It still wins on history. It still wins in many industries. But for a growing number of rich Americans, it no longer wins on value. That is the answer hiding behind the millionaire headline. California did not suddenly become undesirable. It became easier to leave without losing status, opportunity, or identity. And the moment that happened, the wealthiest residents, the people with the sharpest radar for value and the fewest barriers to moving, started going first. Which means the millionaire exodus is not just a story about who is leaving California. It is a story about what California can no longer assume people will stay for.